Hello everyone, my name is Tanya. I am from ABES Engineering College. Today in this lecture, we are going to study about K-means clustering. Table of content is as follows. First is what is K-means clustering algorithm, then practice problem of K-means clustering. So first of all, we need to know about clustering. What is clustering? So basically, clustering is an unsupervised learning algorithm. In clustering, we use to divide our data, which is unlabeled, into some labeled groups, and these groups are called cluster. And this grouping will be performed on the basis of features of the data. So basically, in unsupervised learning, we do not have previous knowledge, we do not have previous supervision. We just need to work on raw data, which is unlabeled, and we have to divide the data into some groups on the basis of data's features. So K-means clustering is one of them. K-means clustering is an unsupervised iterative clustering algorithm. In this algorithm, we divide our data into K cluster. And here K is the number which is predefined. Like we already know how many clusters we are going to design. So basically in K-means clustering, we divide our data or we group our data into the K number of clusters. So the algorithm goes as follows. First, we have to choose any K clusters from the given data points. Because this is an unsupervised learning algorithm, we do not have given clusters. In that case, if we do not have given clusters, then we choose random K data points. K is here number of clusters which we are going to design. So we choose any random K number of data points as a cluster center. Otherwise, the cluster center will be given in the question. Then we used to compute the mean of each cluster. So basically, in the first step, when we do not have any data point in the cluster, we just have single data point in the cluster. So we can say that this is the center of the cluster. Okay. Then we calculate the distance from each data point to the each cluster center. Okay. Then we will assign each data point into some cluster which has the lowest distance from other of the cluster. Okay. So first we compute all these steps. Then after that, we will recalculate the center of newly formed cluster. So basically in the first step, we divide the data into K number of clusters. Then we will recompute the center of the cluster by taking the mean of all those data points which are in the same cluster. Then we will recompute the distance of all data points from the all centers of clusters, centers of all clusters. Then we will reassign data points to the new clusters. So how many times we will iterate these steps, or how many times we will repeat these steps until we can reach at least one condition. Yeah, or we can say that any one of them. The first condition is the center of the cluster do not change its values, or the data points goes to the same cluster again and again, or if we do not reach any of the situation, then we have to fix some maximum number of iteration. Until we reach them, we recompute our cluster centers. So we are going to learn this K-means clustering by the given example. So here we have a space, two-dimensional space. This is our x-axis and this is our y-axis. So we can say that we have data in 2D space, xy space, x-axis and y-axis. So we have various data points here and there in this 2D space. Now we do not have the class name of these data points or any level of the data points. So on the basis of their features, feature. So here we use the distance to categorize this data. So on the basis of distance, we form some clusters. So after the k-means, after we perform the k-means clustering, our data looks like this. Here here after k-means, we have designed 3 clusters and assigned data points. On the basis of distance of the data point from the center, we have assigned our data in different clusters. So we will learn this with this example also. In this example, we have various data points from A1 to A8. We have A1 is 2, 10, A2 is 2, 5, A3 is 8, 4, A4 is 5, 8, A5 is 7, 5, A6 is 6, 4, A7 is 1, 2, and then A8 is 4.9. So we have 8 data points here, and in this problem, we have to design 3 clusters. Okay. If the number of cluster is not given in the question, you can decide it from yourself. Any random number of cluster you can decide, but not as larger than the data points. If we have 6 data points, 8 data points, 10 data points, then we can choose 3 number of clusters. And for more than that data point, we can go for 4 cluster also. So in this question, we initially taken 3 clusters, A1 as a cluster center, A4 as a cluster center, and A7 as a cluster center. So basically, we have chosen 3 data points as a cluster center. So our first cluster C1 is first center of first cluster is C1, that is 2, 10. Then center of second cluster is equals to 5, 8, and center of third cluster is equals to 1, 7. So we have taken these 3 center of cluster from the given data point only. Okay, but one thing we need to understand that if we take data points which are nearby, then there is no use of this algorithm. We need to choose different cluster centers which are as farther than each other. Okay, so that's why we have taken A1, A4, and A7 as 3 centers of 3 clusters. Now we are going to calculate the distance between data point and the cluster center. How can we calculate the distance? Either by giving this formula or by using this Euclidean distance formula. We can use any one of them, the simple distance formula or by using Euclidean distance formula. Value of the distance will be differ from each formula. Okay, from the given one first formula, the value of distance will be different and the value from the second one will be different, but the categorization, the groups, the clusters we form after the iterations will be the same. So we can go either from any of them, but if in the question it is given that by using Euclidean distance formula, then you have to calculate the distance by using Euclidean distance. Okay. So for first data point A1, we will calculate the distance of this cluster center C1 and for data point 1. So what we need to do, x2 minus x1 कार्डिनलिटी हमने इसलिए यूज की है बिकॉज इन सम टाइम वी गॉट द रिजल्ट इन नेगेटिव form also, like -2, -3 or -4. So by the using this cardinality, we will convert it in the unsigned value. Okay, then plus y2 minus y1. So here A1 is equals to 2, 10, and center of C1 is equals to also 2 comma 10. Then P of A comma C1 is equals to x2 is 2 minus x1 is 2 plus y2 is 10 minus y1 is 10. These are in x1, x2 and these are y1, y2. Sorry, x1, x2, x1, y1 or x2, y2. Okay. So 2 minus 2 is 0 plus 10 minus 10 is 0 is equals to 0. So the distance of data point A1 from the center of cluster C1 is equals to 0. Now we will calculate the distance from the next data point A2, that is 2, 5. So x1, y1 are 2, 5 and then center cluster C1 is equals to 2, 10. So here we will calculate the distance of center data point A2 with center of cluster C1 is equals to cardinality of x2 minus x1. So x2 and y2 are 2, 10. So 2 minus 2 plus y2 minus y1 is equals to 10 minus 5 is equals to 0 plus 5 is equals to 5. So the distance of data point 2 from the center of cluster 1 is equals to 5. Okay. So like this, we will calculate the distance for all 8 data points from the cluster 1. In the next step, we will calculate the distance of all these data points with the cluster, with the center of cluster 2. So P of A1 comma C2 is equals to, so A1 is 2, 10 and so x1, y1 is 2, 10 and now x2, y2 is equals to 5, 8 because now we are calculating the distance from the center of cluster 2. So 5 minus 2 plus 8 minus 10 is equals to 3 plus 8 minus 10 is equals to minus 2. But because we are using cardinality function here, so we will write it as 2 is equals to 5. So the distance from data point A1 to center of cluster 2 is 5. Now we will calculate for next data point A2, C2 is equals to, now in A2, x1, y1 are 2, 5 and our x2, y2 are 5, 8. So x2 yani 5 minus 2 plus y2 minus y1 is equals to 8 minus 5 is equals to 5 minus 2 is 3 plus 8 minus 5, 3 is equal to 6. Okay. Now we will calculate for cluster 3 also. Okay. So in case of cluster 3, x2 and y2 are 1, 7. No. So like cluster 1, center of cluster 1 and center of cluster 2, we will calculate distance for all 8 data points from center of cluster 3. So distance of A1, C1 is equals to x2 minus x1, that is 1 minus 2 plus y2 minus y1, that is 7 minus 10 is equals to 1 minus 2 is 1 plus 7 minus 10 is minus 3, but with the help of cardinality, we will write it as 3. So distance from cluster 3 of A1 is equals to 4. For data point 2 also is equals to 1 minus 2 and then 7 minus 5 is equals to 1 plus 2 is equals to 3. So we have calculated a distance for data point A1 and A2 here, and we will calculate the distance for all 8 data points one by one with all center of all clusters. Then we will assign our data point into the given cluster centers on the basis of this distance. So let's suppose for data point A1. For data point A1, we have distance from cluster 1 is 0. From cluster 2, for data point 1, we have distance 5. For data point A1 from cluster center 3, we have distance 4. So from this study, we can say the distance of data point A1 is lesser than to the other cluster center as compared to cluster 1. Because the value of the distance from cluster 1, center of cluster 1 to the data point A1 is 0, and from C2 is 5, and from C3 is 4. So 0 is the lesser value. So we will assign our data point A1 to the cluster C1. So in the result of first iteration, we will get this result. Okay, so I have designed this table because it is easier to understand in the form of table. So how I have designed this table? So these are giving the 8 data points, and distance from the center of cluster 1. So center of cluster 1 is 2, 10. Center of cluster 2 is 5, 8. Center of distance from cluster center 1, 2, that is center of cluster 3. So I have designed the table in this form, and here for this, the given point belongs to which cluster, we will assign it in this column. So first, for data point A1, the distance from the center of cluster 1 is 0. The distance from the cluster center 2 is 5. And the distance from the cluster center 3 is 9. Okay. So by looking at this table, we can easily identify that the lesser distance is 0. So the data point A1 will goes to the cluster 1. And so for all data point, we have calculated distances, and then we had assigned the data point to the cluster. So the data point A2 will go to the cluster 3, because the 4 is the lesser value as compared to 5 and 6, and 4 is the distance of data point A2 from the cluster center C3. So like this, we have assigned all 8 data points to the given clusters on the basis of distance. Now we will recompute the mean value of all clusters by taking the mean of all data points in the same cluster. So center of C1, we will recompute the center of C1. So center of C1 is equals to, we have to take the mean of all data points which are in C1. So there is only 2, 10 in C1. So the next center of the C1 is also 2, 10, because there is only 1 point. Now center of C2 is equals to, we have to take the mean of all data points which are in C2. So in C2 we have 8, 4, 5, 8, 7, 5, and 6, 4, and 4, 9. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data points in cluster C2. So we will calculate x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus x4 plus x5 divide by 5 as the for center of the cluster, comma, y1 plus y2 plus y3 plus y4 plus y5 divide by 5. So values are 8 plus 5 plus 7 plus 6 plus 4 divide by 5, comma. I will write it on the next page. Okay. 8 plus 7 plus 5 plus 4 plus I have left 6. 6 also. We will add 6 also. Divide by 5, comma. For y value also we will add 4, comma 8. 4 plus 8 plus 5. 4 plus 8 plus 5 plus 4 plus 9. Plus 4 plus 9. Divide by 5. So value will be 30 divided by 5, comma 30 डिवाइड बाय 5. ऐड कर लीजिए, ऐड करने पर यही वैल्यूज आएंगी. सो 30 डिवाइड बाय 5 इज 6, comma 6. So the new center of cluster 2 is 6, comma 6. So again we will calculate the center of the next cluster C3 like this also. How many data points we have in C3? Data point A2 and data point A7. So center of C3 is equals to, we have 2 data points here, so we will write it as 2 data points are in cluster C3. A2 is 2, 5 or and A7 is 1, 2. So we will compute the new center of cluster 3 as 2 plus 1 divided by 2, 5 plus 2 divided by 2. So how the number of data points we have in our cluster, we will divide with the same number. Okay, so here we have 5 data points because we are taking mean. That's why we have divided by 5. Here we have 2 data points in a cluster. That's why we are dividing by 2. So center of C3 is equals to 3 by 2, 7 by 2 is equals to 1.5, 3.5. Okay. So again, now we have 3 centers of newly formed cluster. C1 dash is equals to 2, 10. C2 dash is equals to 6, 6. And C3 dash is equals to 1.5, 3.5. Okay. Now we will recompute the distance of all 8 data points with these new center of clusters. So in result, we will get the result like this. The new cluster points are center of cluster are 2, 10, 6, 6, 1.5, 3.5. Again, we will calculate the distance by using distance formula, and then we will reassign our data points. So data point A1 has the distance from cluster 1 is 0, from cluster 2 is 8, and then 8. and then from cluster 3, 7. So the lesser distance is 0. So the data point A1 again goes to the cluster C1. Then we will look for data point 2. The distance from center of cluster 1 is 5, and the distance from center of second cluster is 5. And again, the distance from cluster center C3 is 2. So the lesser value is 2, and this is the distance from center of cluster C3. Then data point A2 goes to cluster C3. Then again, we will look for distance of data point A3 from all the clusters. So 4 is the lesser value. Then the data point A3 goes to cluster C2. Then for data point A4, the lesser distance is 3. And this is the distance from cluster 2. So the data point A4 is also goes to cluster C2. And then the distance of data point A5 is lesser than other data point from the cluster center of cluster 2. Then A5 also goes to C2, cluster C2. Then for A6, 2 is the lesser value, which is the distance from center of cluster 2. Then A6 also goes to the cluster C2. Then in case of A7, the distance 2 is less, which is the distance from center of cluster 3. Then A7 also goes to cluster C3. And the last one, A8, the distance of distance 3 is less than as compared to other distance. And this is the distance from the cluster center C1. That's why A8 goes to cluster C1. So with the help of this iterative approach, we will divide our data into different clusters on the basis of similarity, or in this case of k-means, on the basis of distance of data point from the given cluster center. Okay, so we will repeat all these all these steps until the value of cluster center will not be changed, and the data points goes to the same cluster. Okay, so thank you for this this session.